how are you? How are you today? ¿Cómo está Cayo? I have to say this from the penthouse of Myrna Calderon. Thank you, Jermaine. If you're watching this video, thank you for this penthouse for free. 2 weeks. Thank you. That's a lot of money. Thank you. Today, I'm a little bit sick, but I'm satisfied that the sickness that I have is a result of my preaching. And I am very happy. When I get sick for the sake of getting sick, I'm not happy. But if I get sick for the sake of the gospel, I become satisfied. Well, here's the scripture for today. Acts 15:35. Then, after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let us now go back and visit our brethren in every city where I have preached the word." Now, Barnabas was determined to take John Mark. But Paul said, "I am not taking John Mark back." Paul insisted that they should not take them, the one who had departed, the one who had jumped ship, the one who had abandoned, the deserter. Paul insisted, and they had a big fight. There was a triangle. It's not a love triangle. It's a work relationship triangle. Here's Barnabas, here's Paul, and here's John Mark. And they were fighting over the fact that they should take him or not. Paul says, "We're not going to take him." He jumped ship. And Barnabas says, "We are going to take him." The fight, the strife, the argument was so strong that they separated. Paul went with Silas, and Barnabas took John Mark. That is the scripture for today. Now, you may be saying, Pastor Benjamin, but why did John Mark jump ship? Why did he abandon Paul? What a disrespectful act. He goes to mommy in Jerusalem. Well, the Bible doesn't say the reasons, but every time you say he goes to mommy in Jerusalem, I get offended, because I had the privilege of living with my mom since 2006. For 20 years, she lived with me. And I had the privilege of being intermittently since 1996 with the two sets of in-laws. So when John Mark goes to visit his mom, it is something that I respect. It's admirable. So even though the Bible doesn't say, he may have gone to check on his mom. "Hey, Mom, how you doing? Are you eating well? Are you protected? Are you sick? How you doing, Mom? I need to protect you." John is taking care of the mother of Jesus, Mary. I am taking on my own mom, Mary of Jerusalem. Peter is my dad. He's somewhere else. I need to take care of you. So that's something respectful. When he jumped ship from the missionary endeavor of Paul and Barnabas, it was something, in my view, in my humble opinion, it was something admirable. So I take off my hat at John Mark. He was checking on his mom. But when he returns and he wants to join the missionary endeavor to visit in the second missionary journey and third and fourth, Paul says, "No, get out of here." Barnabas says, "Yes, join me, I'll go with you. After all, you're my relative. You're my cousin. And maybe you went to see my cousin, your mom, who's my relative also. I have respect for you." There is a God of a second chance. And today, the story for today is an ABC, Alejandro Bullón classic. 40, maybe 50 years ago, Pastor Bullón left Peru and went to Brazil to organize a huge camporee, 500, 600, 1,000. All the Pathfinder clubs of the area, of the conference, were gathering in one place. Now there was one kid, we're going to change his name to Ricardo, one kid who was the worst. The members of his club said, "Pastor Bullón, do not allow him to join you." Why not? Well, they said, "This Ricardo, you really need to be careful. Do you really want to take him?" And the pastor says, "Yeah, I have no problem." Do you know what he has done to this church? No, I don't. Do you know that he's the embarrassment to his family? No, I don't. Well, you shouldn't take him. We don't recommend it. The pastor said, well, I don't know him, so I'm going to give him a second chance. So they gather together. They go to the clubs. They bring their tents. They set up their tents. They put a fire in between, a lot of wood. When all of a sudden, at 1 o'clock in the morning, all the girls are screaming, because this little Ricardo, 13, 14-year-old, had thrown buckets of boiling water to the tents, and the girls are screaming all over. And in the middle of the fire, he had made a doll made of rags and duct tape, and put a huge sign in the stomach, and put that doll burning, huge burning doll, like a snowman. And the sign had Pastor Bullon right there, written. He was burning Pastor Bullon. Pastor also is a human being. And he has the human part of his nature, ready to kick him out, ready to dismiss him. He goes to his tent. He arrives at the door of the tent. And when he arrives and calls for Ricardo to come out, Ricardo comes out with 2 pieces of luggage and say, Pastor, don't say a single word. I'm leaving. Pastor says to him, well, who told you were leaving? Well, every time you show up in a disciplinary process, if you break it once, you go to the deputy. If you break it twice, you go to the director. If you break it the same violation 3 times, you go to the pastor. And the 4th time, you go to the superintendent, the youth director of the conference. And every time you show up, it's just to kick him out. No, I'm not here to kick you out, said the pastor. I'm here to tell you 3 words. Oh, and the kid opened up his eyes. I came to tell you that I love you. You what? Yes, what you just heard. I came to tell you that I love you. Pastor, don't say that, please. No one loves me. My parents do not love me. My teachers do not love me. My church do not love me. Everybody despises me. I bring embarrassment to my church. No, I'm here to tell you that I love you, said the pastor. And I'm here to tell you that I want you to stay. You want me to what? I want you to stay. And I want you to be in charge of the discipline of the camp. Oh my goodness, that was a beautiful camp. That was transformed into the best camporee ever. Everything was tidy. Everything was organized in order. No more violations. It was peaceful. And at the end of the last Saturday night, everyone left to their homes and to their houses. And that is the end of the story. But 10 years later, I want to say something in parentheses. 10 years later, Pastor Bullon is walking from the cafeteria of the Institute of Theological Studies of Brazil, or seminary, walking from the cafeteria to the dorm. It was a gathering moment for all the pastors. When all of a sudden, the pastor is walking on the sidewalk, and he's intercepted, 10 years later, intercepted by a 21, maybe 22, a 22-year-old man, young man, with a nice shirt, a nice tie, and says, Pastor, do you remember me? No, I'm sorry, I don't. Pastor, don't you remember me? No, I don't. Do you remember the camporee where your name was on a doll and I was burning it? Ricardo, the 13-year-old? No. Is this you? And what are you doing here? What are you doing in this seminary? Pastor, at the end of the year, I am graduating as a pastor. And today that boy is a famous pastor of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Family, children, successful. Now, before I finish, what would have happened if that boy had been kicked out 10 years before? What would have happened to that boy had he been kicked out? Had the rules been followed strictly? What would have happened to that boy? No mercy. He probably would have ended up in jail. But when he discovered that someone loved him, that someone cared for him, that there was a God of a second chance, that was all the stimulus he needed to stand up, behave, and walk in the straight path of righteousness. See you tomorrow.